what you're witnessing from a Q view, and this is how I see everything, is a Q view. It's kind of why it's hard to connect with people because it really does seem if you weren't dialed in to the Q operation back then in Trump's first administration, you really don't have the same lens that were pretty obsessed with figuring things out and digging after all of the information dumped on the internet. There's just a different understanding of what's going on, and it's not to say that I'm better than anybody. It's just I have a different view, a different lens per se. And the way I see it right now is we are in an information war. We have been our entire lives. This is much bigger than any of us alive today have ever, like, we were born into this. This corrupt empire has overtaken the world. I want you to just kind of envision it the way that I do. I put the crown, the financial empire that funds and controls all of the dirty dealings around the world. They are the core, and then the tentacles from that are all of the corrupt um, cartels around the world. Like the Federal Reserve System, and this federal system is a corrupted, controlled system. The system is the problem. It is a part of something much bigger than any of us can imagine because we were all born into it. This financial empire back in late 1600s that's when it engulfed Britain. And through control over Britain, they started implementing a lot of things that were not beneficiary to the people. It's an enslavement system. A lot of people didn't agree. Our founders did not agree. But that financial system was here in the United States with its representatives at the time that our country was founded. That's who we were separating from. But it was very short lived because this financial system still had plenty of power and was very cunning with the way it operated and still operates. It's very, very meticulous and well done, very well done. It's just so deceitful at its core. But this financial empire began installing representatives and having representatives act as essentially assets to the financial empire. And that hasn't gone away. It started way back just after our country was founded when the Federalists and the federal system really began to take hold. The federal system is what had hold of the North in the war for independence from the South. The South was fighting for independence from an invading and a North that was pushing on them because they were racist. They were trying to take down the Union, but essentially they just wanted separation from the tariffs and taxes that were being imposed and targeted at the South. They taxed and tariffed the South on purpose, tobacco and cotton, in order to send a message and make them a part of this union. At that point, the union became involuntary. Up until that point, it was voluntary, and the South said, "No, we're not going to be a part of your system." And the Crown Financial Empire decided slowly over time that wasn't going to happen. We were going to be a part of that financial empire one way or another. And over time, they planted a bank here. They installed an internal revenue service versus the external revenue service that we had. We had an external revenue service, tariffs, up until 1913, the Federal Reserve Bank. The federal system, the Federal Reserve Bank, was put in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C., as you know, is not a state, and it's through this sorcery of lawfare and confusion. It's not technically a part of our country, but it's definitely a part of this financial empire. But that's where they planted their bank after they made DC a body corporate in 1871, after the fog of the Civil War, which wasn't what they said it was. It was a war for independence from this financial empire.
British financial empire uses representatives, the Federalists, to make the U.S. an asset. They orchestrated and funded a civil war to crush white independence through guilt. They did this to Germany and to Russia.
And it just hasn't gone away. Their control over us, their control over this slow degradation of our country and elimination of white people, it's the same empire. The same people that got control of Britain back then are the ones that are in control now. And they have had control over our country, like I said, as long as we've been alive. There's been it. You have felt it. Everybody has felt it, especially if you. I'm from Miami. People don't even believe me when I say that, but I was born in Miami, and my people, my heritage, and what I grew up with was in the Everglades and the woods of Miami. It was Hialeah was a very white place. It was 87% white, and then the Cuban crisis happened, and the manipulation within our country allowed the entire thing to accelerate at a fast pace. Through the use of the welfare and Medicaid as an attractant for these immigrants, while opening up the immigration tremendously. And it's not an accident that happened at the same time that communism was squeezing out Cubans. So this financial empire was squeezing Cubans out and then opening up the floodgates on our side through their representatives that they controlled. This financial empire is who orchestrated these very fraudulent elections. That's the orchestration. It comes from London. Israel is like an outpost, but the city of London is where this was all born. Something much older than the current nation state of Israel and much older than our country. And what you're seeing is Donald Trump separating us from that. And that's where the Q view comes in. You have to analyze it from that perspective. So when I listen to Donald Trump speak, like the night before inauguration,
after years of building up foreign nations, defending foreign borders, and protecting foreign lands, we are finally going to build up our country, defend our borders, and protect our citizens. We will stop illegal immigration once and for all. We will not be invaded. We will not be occupied. We will not be overrun. We will not be conquered. We will be a free and proud nation once again, and that will take place tomorrow at 12 o'clock.
he said, "We will no longer be occupied." And I heard that loud and clear. I understood that. But the average person might think that even pays attention to it, might think that that's just some kind of, fake image to sell to a vulnerable people. But it's not, because then you listen to them. You just have a different lens when you pay attention to the Q thing, or have paid attention to the Q thing from the beginning, because it makes the most sense. Donald Trump, as soon as he got into office, the administration and the military began this military operation to fight back against this this occupation and wake the people up. We're in the awakening now. This was very hard to get through to anybody about 6 years ago, 7 years ago. It has put a lot of people, isolated a lot of people, because once you wake up to it, it's not, you can't ever go back. And this control has been, there's been a counterattack to it. This control over our country, this financial empire that has enslaved us. Donald Trump has been fighting back with the patriots. The U.S. military is much more than people realize and capable of much more than people realize. And Donald Trump has spent his life in this system, mastering relationships and deal making and understanding the financial system incredibly. He understands their game. So he stepped into the role of, he knew something needed to be done. And the great minds of this country, the great military minds, got together and figured something out for us. And in 2017, this information dropped on the internet. And it didn't hit right away, but it did with a very small group of people. And then over the next 2-3 years is when it started to get the attention of those that were kind of feeling it and seeing it, you know, on the outside, like, this is clearly a sham. They are targeting Donald Trump and, you know, MAGA. They were targeting us with their propaganda from their media, you know, uneducated white males. It came about very heavy and very quick that something wasn't right. So anyways, this Q operation got my attention. And it makes the most sense over time when you analyze, when you pay attention to what are called deltas, where the future proves past, and you see these markers come along that were predicted 7 years ago. Things happen and you're like, wow, Q wrote about that 7 years ago. And it's happened quite a bit, and it's happening extremely fast and en masse right now from Trump and the White House and the military. When you see the patriots in control, locked in, trust the plan, that kind of stuff, you know, like coming from the military, you know the operation is real. That's a pretty substantial marker and confirmation. And when that clicks, it's like, thank you, Donald Trump. But oh my gosh, what you guys, the rest of the world, is missing, this view that I have of him saving the country is just, I wish more people could see what he's doing and how he's doing it. He has put them on display. The military has put them on display. It's not an accident that Elon got a hold of X, or Twitter turned it into X. And it's not an accident that the X was in a flag in our country's history that tried to break away from this financial empire hundreds of years ago. It's not an accident that any of this is happening and that this conversation is all coming together. You got J6 with the weaponization fund conversation, the election that's happening in California that's mirroring a pattern that's been going on for decades that arose after the 2004 election, when machines were implemented en masse and voting procedures were drastically altered. And then the Obama administration comes in and starts suing states into compliance, and this massive voter restructure takes place over our country, and they start installing their candidates like crazy. It really amplified in 2013-14, especially when they started naming the blue shift directly on their media. They called the blue shift out on their media ahead of time in order to precondition the public about the blue shift. And so that when the public saw the Democrats, the people who follow it like crazy, when they saw the blue shift actually happen, they weren't surprised. This is just how it happens. We got election weeks and not day anymore. And that all arose after 2004, which was when this voting tech monopoly began over our country. This voting tech monopoly, which serves this overall financial empire, as we know. They fund just about everything in our life. They put money where they want it to go. They fund the orchestration against America. They started just taking elections all over the country and then implementing all of this gay LGBT agenda and this feminism and calling us all of the worst things in the world and pushing white guilt like crazy. And they started socially programming people through use of the algorithm and the coordination between our government, the FBI, and these platforms. They were all coordinating, and that's the thing, is like when you start to dig into like documents that come from the NGOs, and you want to know where the NGOs get their money, and it's all tied to the billionaires, the same NGO complex system that people don't really understand or haven't really understood for a long time, but it's been in place for a long time. And when every road leads to this financial empire, you start to get a better view of who's doing it. They orchestrated against our country, and they still continue to do so, and they're stealing our elections. And there was a group of people that stood up to this blue shift, this inorganic turn that our country has taken. And that's J6. The people of America that stood up to this blue shift on January 6th. I don't care whether you were arrested or not. You represent something that this crown financial empire, this communist financial empire, the financial empire discovered a long time ago that communism was a good tool. In fact, many believe that this financial empire purposefully constructed this mechanism of communism in order to start overtaking countries around the world. But they don't like us, the people that stand up to them. And they made examples out of us. They scared us on purpose. They labeled us terrorists, insurrectionists. They got Antifa to threaten us and keep us terrified. They hunted us down. They raided us pre-dawn, unannounced. They had our wives miscarriages in real time. They were releasing the footage of these FBI raids from these body cams where the wife and the kids were terrified. And they were pumping this propaganda to the public, and they were scaring the crap out of people. It's psychological warfare, and it comes from somewhere. It's economic warfare. It's lawfare. It's orchestration at a level that is military grade and above. This is older than our country. Donald Trump's breaking us free from that, and it's just incredible to see.